Hey and welcome back and फिर से आपको स्वागत है मेरे इस वीडियो में। एंड आज हम पढ़ने वाले हैं भाई पार्ट 3 की चैप्टर नंबर 4। उसमें क्या है कि ड्रॉप ऑफ हनी। एंड उससे पहले हम पढ़ चुके हैं भाई पार्ट 3 की चैप्टर नंबर 3। उसमें हम उसमें से क्या मिला कि एक प्रिंसिपल है उसमें जो कि भाई आप कुछ गलत, आपको लग रहा है कि महसूस हुआ कि आप कुछ गलत किया, मतलब मैंने कुछ कर किया, मुझे लगा कि उसमें कुछ गलती मैंने किया है, तो पहले से ही मान लेना कि वो मैं गलती आप ऐसा क्विकली एंड एम्पैथिकली। ओके, तो जो सामने वाला बंदा ना अपने आप ही वो फिर से आपको नहीं बोलेगा कि तुमने ये रंग किया है या कुछ और, तो ऐसे ही। ओके, एंड आज मैंने चैप्टर पार्ट 3 की चैप्टर नंबर 4 को हम रीड करेंगे। एंड इफ योर टेम्पर इज अराउज एंड यू टेल हिम a thing or two, you will have a fine time unloading your feelings, but what about the other person? Will he share your pleasure? Will your belligerent tones, your hostile attitude make it easy for him to agree with you? Okay? If you come at me with your face double, said Woodrow Wilson, I think I can promise you that mine will be double as fast as yours. But if you come to me and say, let us sit down and take counsel together, and if we differ from each other and understand why it is that we differ, just what the points at issue are, we'll presently find that we are not so far apart after all, that the points on which we differ are few and points on which we agree are many, and that if we only have to patience and the candor, the desire to get together, we will get together. Nobody appreciated the truth of Woodrow Wilson's statements more than John D. Rockefeller, Gr. Back in 1915. Rockefeller was the most fiercely despised man in the Colorado. One of the bloodiest strikes in the history of the American industry had been shocking the state for 2 terrible years. Irate, obedient miners were demanding higher wages from the Colorado Fuel and Iron Company. Rockefeller controlled that company. Property had been destroyed, troops had been called out, blood had been shed, strikers had been shot, their bodies riddled with bullets. At a time like that, with the air sitting with hatred, Rockefeller wanted to win the strikers to his way of thinking, and he did it. How? Here is the story. After weeks spent in making friends, Rockefeller addressed the representative of the strikes. This speech, in its entirety, is a masterpiece. It produced astonishing results. It calmed the tempestuous waves of hate that threatened to engulf Rockefeller. It owned him a host of admirers. It presented facts in such a friendly manner that the strikers went back to work without saying another word about the increase in wages for which they had fought so violently. The opening of the remarkable speech follows. Not Okay, the opening of that remarkable speech follows. Not how it fairly glows with friendliness. Rockefeller, remember, was talking to men who a few days previously had wanted to hang him by the neck to soar a tree. Yet he could not have been more gracious, more friendly, if he had addressed a group of medical missionaries. His speech was radiant with such phrases as I am proud to be here, having visited in your homes. meet many of your wives and children. We meet here not as strangers but as friends, spirit of mutual friendship, our common interest, and it is only by your courtesy that I am here. This is a red letter day in my life, a Rockefeller vegan. It is the first time I have ever had the good fortune to meet the representatives of the employees of this great company, its officers and superintendents together, and I can assure you that I am proud to be here and that I shall remember these gatherings as long as I live. Had this meeting been held 2 weeks ago, I should have stood here a stranger to most of your and recognizing a few faces. Okay, having had the opportunity last week of visiting all the campus in the southern coal field and talking individually with practically all of the representatives except those who were away, having visited in your homes. Okay, where having visited in your homes, meet many of your wives and children. We meet here not as strangers but as friends, and it is that spirit of mutual friendship that I am glad to have this opportunity to discuss with you and your our common interest, since this is a meeting of officers of the company and the representatives of the employees. It is only by your courtesy that I am here, for I am not so fortunate to as be either one or the other, and yet I feel that I am intimately associated with you men. For in a sense, I represent both the stockholders and directors. Isn't that a superb example of the fine art of making friends out of the enemies? Suppose Rockefeller had taken a different tack. Suppose he had argued with those miners and hurled devastating facts in their faces. Suppose he had told them by his tones and insinuations that they were wrong. Suppose that by all the rules of logic he had proved that they were wrong. What would have happened? More anger would have been stirred of more hatred, more revolt. If a man's heart is rankling with discord and ill feeling toward you, you can't win him to your way of thinking with all the logic in Christendom. Scolding parents of domineering bosses and husbands and nagging wives out to realize that people don't want to change their minds. They can't be forced or driven to agree with you and me, but they may possibly be lead to if we are gentle and friendly, ever so gently, ever so friendly. Lincoln said that in effect over 100 years ago. Here is worse. It is an old and true maxim that a drop of honey catches more flies than a gallon of gall. So, with men, if you would win a man to your cause, first convince him that you are this his sincere friend. There, therein is a drop of honey that catches his heart, which say what you will, is the great high road to his region. Business executives have learned that it pays to be friendly to strikers. For example, when 2,500 employees in the White Motor Company's plant struck for higher wages and a unions of Robert F. Black, then president of the company, did not lose his temper and condemned and threatened and talk of tyranny and the communist. He actually praised the strikers. He published an advertisement in the Cleveland papers complimenting them on the peaceful way in which they laid down their tools. Finding the strike pickets, Idle he bought them a couple of dozen baseball bats and gloves and invited them to play ball on vacant lots. For those who preferred bowling, he rented a bowling alley. This friendliness or Mr. Black's spot did what friendliness always does. It begot friendliness, so the strikers borrowed brooms, shovels, and rubbish carts and began picking up matches, paper, and cigarette stubs and cigar boats around the factory. Imagine it, imagine strikers tidying of the factory grounds while battling for higher wages and recognition of the Union. Such an event had never been heard of before in the long, tempestuous history of American labor wars. The strike ended with a compromise settlement within a week, ended without any ill feeling or rancor. Daniel Webster, who looked like a god and talked like Jehovah, was one of the most successful advocates who ever pleaded a case, yet he usurred in his most powerful arguments with such friendly remarks as, "It will be for the jury to consider. This may perhaps be worth thinking of. Here are some facts that I trust you will not lose sight of, or you, with your knowledge of human nature, will easily see the significance of these facts. No bulldozing, no high pressure methods, no attempt to force his opinions on others. Webster used the soft spoken, quite friendly approach, and it helped to make like famous. You may never be called upon to settle a strike or address a jury, but you may want to get your rent reduced. Will the friendly approach help you then? Let's see. O.L. Starr, an engineering, wanted to get his rent reduced, and he knew his landlord was hard boiled. I wrote him, Mr. Starr said in a speech before in the class, notifying him that I was vacating my apartment as soon as my lease expired. The truth was, I did not want to move. I wanted to stay if I could get my rent reduced, but the situation seemed hopeless. Other tenants, tenants had tried and failed. Everyone told me that the landlord was extremely difficult to deal. But I said to myself, I am studying a course in how to deal with people. So I will try it on him and see how it works. He and his secretary came to see me as soon as he got my letter. I met him at the door with a friendly greeting. My fairly bubbled with good will and enthusiasm. I did I did not begin talking about how high the rent was. I began talking about how much I liked his high apartment house. Believe me, I was hearty in my approbation and lavish in my praise. I complimented him on the way he ran the building and told him I should like so much to stay for another year, but I could not afford it. He had evidently never had such a reception from a tenant. He hardly knew what to make it of. Then he started to tell me his troubles, complaining tenants. One had written him 14 letters, some of them positively insulting. Another threatened to break his lease unless the landlord kept the men on the floor above from snoring. What a relief it is, he said, to have a satisfied tenant like you, and then without my even asking him to do it, he offered to reduce my rent a little. I wanted more. So I named the figure I could afford to pay, and he accepted without a word. As he was leaving, he returned to me and asked, what decorating can I do for you? If I had tried to get the rent reduced by the methods the other tenants are using, I am positive I should have met with the same failure they encountered. It was the friendly, sympathetic, appreciative approach that won. Dean Woodcock of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, is the superintendent of the department of the local electric company. His staff was called upon to repair some equipments on the top of pole. This type of work had formerly been performed by a different department and had only recently been transformed to Woodcock's section, although his people had been trained in the work. This was the first time they had ever actually been called upon to do it. Everybody in the organization was interested in seeing if and how they could handle it. Mr. Woodcock, several of his subordinate managers and members of other departments of the utility ran to see the operation. Many cars and the strokes were there, and a number of people were standing around watching the two lone men on top of the pole. Glancing around, Woodcock noticed a man off the street getting out of his car with a camera. He began taking pictures of the scene. Utility people are extremely conscious of public relations, and suddenly Woodcock realized what this setup looked like to the man with a camera. Overkill, dozens of people being called out to do two persons' job. He strolled off the street to the photographer. I see you are interested in our operation. Yes, my brother will be more than interested. She owns stock in your company. This is will be an eye opener for her. She may even decide her investment was unwise. I have been telling her for years there a lot of waste motion in companies like yours. This proves it. The newspaper might like these pictures too. It does look like it, does not it? I had think the same thing in your position, but this is a unique situation. And Dean Woodcock went on to explain how this was the first job of this type for his department and how everybody from executives down was interested. He assured the men that under normal conditions, two people could handle the job. The photographer put away his camera, shook Woodcock's hand, and thanked him for taking the time to explain the situation to him. Dean Woodcock's friend approach saved his company much embarrassment and bad publicity. Another member of one of our classes, Gerald H. Wynne of the little town New Hampshire reported how by using a friendly approach he obtained a very satisfactory settlement on a damage claim. Early in the spring, he reported, before the ground had thawed from the winter freezing, there was an unusual heavy rainstorm, and the water, which normally would have run off to nearby ditches and storm drains along the road, took a new course onto a buildings, a lot where I had just built a new home. Not being able to run off, the water pressure built up around the foundation of the house. The water forced itself under the concrete basement floor, causing it to explode and basement filled with water. This ruined and furnace and a hot water heater. The cost to repair damage and was to excess of $2,000. I had no insurance to cover this type of damage. However, I soon found out that the owner of the subdivision had neglected to put in a storm drain near the house, which could have prevented this problem. I made an appointment to see him during the 25-mile trip to his office. I carefully reviewed the situation and remembering the principles I learned in this course, I decided that showing my anger and would not serve any earthly purpose. When I arrived, I kept very calm and started by talking about his recent vacation to the West Indies. Then, when I felt the timing was right, I mentioned the little problem of water damage. He quickly agreed to this share in helping to correct problem. A few days later, he called and said he would pay for the damage and also put in a storm drain to prevent the same thing from happening in the future. Even though it was the fault of the owner of the subdivision. If I had not begun in a friendly way, there would have been a great deal of difficulty in getting him to agree to the total liability. Years ago, when I was a barefoot boy walking through the woods to country school out in northwest Missouri, I read a fable about the sun and the wind. They quarreled about which was the stronger, and the wind said, I will prove I am. See the old man down there with a coat. I bet I can get his coat off him quicker than you can. So the sun went behind a cloud and the wind blew until it was almost a tornado. But the harder it blew, the tighter the old man closed his coat to him. Finally, the wind calmed down and gave off her, and then the sun came out from behind the clouds and smiled kindly. And on the old man presently he made his brow and folded off his coat. The sun then told the wind that gentleness and the friendliness were always stronger than fury and force. The use of gentlemen and friendliness is demonstrated day after day by people who have learned that a drop of honey catches more flies than a gallon of gall. F. Gale Connor of Lutherville, Maryland, proved this when he had to take his 4-month-old car to the service department of the car dealer for the third time. He told our class it was apparent that talking to, reasoning with the, or shouting at the service manager was not going to lead to a satisfactory solution of my problems. I walked over the showroom and asked to see the agency owner, Mr. White. After a short wait, I was ushered into Mr. White's office. I introduced myself and explained to him that I had brought my car from his dealership because of the recommendation of friends who had had previous dealings with him. I was told that his prices were very competitive and his service was outstanding. He smiled with satisfaction as he listened to me. Then explained the problem I was having with the service department. I thought you might want to be aware of any situation that might tarnish your fine reputation. I added, he thanked me for calling this to his attention and assured me that my problem would be taken care of. Not only did he personally get involved, but he also lent me his car to use while mine was being repaired. Asoph was a Greek Slav who lived at the court of Croesus and spun immortal fables 600 years before Christ. Yet the truth he taught about human nature are just as true in Boston and Birmingham. Now, as they were 26 centuries ago in Athens, the sun can make you take off your coat more quickly than the wind, and kindliness, the friendly approach and appreciation can make people change their minds more readily than the bluster and the storming in the world. Remember what Lincoln said, a drop of honey catches more flies than a gallon of gall. Principle 4. Begin in a friendly way. Okay, this is the all about the chapter number 4. First, what's the problem? No matter no matter how you can be solved. Think in your mind. Okay, suppose you have a car and you have the problem with your car, and you go to the department of the car company where they sell and where you buy that car, and you directly go and spout boast all that you have in problem in your car. That's not exactly the way of to say people to they can offer you. But when you go and meet, introduce yourself, and in a friendly way talk, and when they have satisfaction with your words, then start your problem saying, okay, explain your problem. Then he offered by them by own self to you the problem solutions. So whenever you start in a friendly way, start friendly way. Okay, this is all about the part number 3 of the how to win friends and influence people book, chapter number 4. This is a great बुक. ओके, अब तक की ना जितने भी बुक पढ़ी है ना, सबसे बेस्ट बुक मेरे मैंने जितने मतलब कितना वो पहले 3 बुक पढ़े ना, 3 बुक्स में ना ये बहुत अच्छा लगा मेरे को. सही. एंड आज है 1 सितंबर. आज सितंबर हुआ लगता है. September 1, 2024 and day आज संडे है. ओके, अब मिलते हैं. बाय.